It is apple season. It's my favorite time of year in Ontario, actually. In Foodland Ontario, home economist Teresa Makarewicz going to walk us through a couple of easy recipes. One is a sweet and one is a savory. Welcome, and welcome to our beautiful kitchen.
It is extraordinary. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Yes, so we're going to make a soup, and it's a squash and apple soup with maple. So everything that we're using today is in season.
Okay.
So you can find it at your grocery store or at the farmer's market. So for the squash and apple soup, I've already started the onions, and I've used butter, but you could use a vegetable oil if you like. And we're adding a butternut squash, and we do have one here, and it's very easy to prepare. I like to use the vegetable peeler, and just to take the skin off.
Okay.
And you don't have to, you can leave some of the skin on. It will break down. So it's one butternut squash, and to this we're adding 2 cloves of Ontario garlic, and you'll see that I've just cut them in half because they were large. If they were small, they could just go in, but I cut them in half. And so the butternut squash kind of has a mellow kind of flavor, and then we're going to just enhance it with some mildly tart apples. And I'm using I'm trying to remember, what did I use? I've made this so many times.
Okay, they're the red ones. Is it?
They're the, excuse me, a Honey Crisp and also a Gala. So I'm using 2. So they all have, all the apples, we have over 15 varieties of apples in Ontario. They all have, you know, some are mildly tart, some are sweet. So you kind of have, I like to use a combination.
I like to use a mix too, yeah.
And I've left the skin on. You could peel the skin if you like, but I like to leave it on because it has all the fiber and all the goodness in it. And it's going to cook down anyway.
Okay.
So super easy. We're adding broth. You could use chicken broth or you could use a vegetable broth. For seasoning, we have some fresh thyme, some pepper and salt. If you don't have fresh thyme, dried will work perfectly. Now you can find all of our recipes on foodlandontario.ca, and as I mentioned to you, you could substitute. So use our recipes just as a guideline.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So all you would do is bring this to a boil and then put your lid on and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. You just want the squash to soften up and the apples. And then it just goes into a blender and puree it, or you could use an immersion blender if you have that at home. And it's almost good to go.
Now, for safety purposes, when you're putting into the blender, is it best to maybe let the soup cool off a little bit so you're not going to burn yourself?
That's why I like to use the immersion blender, because it's a lot easier. And this is kind of a soup that you make ahead. I find, and I know you afterwards. The next day it tastes better. So to finish it off, we're just going to enhance the sweetness in the squash and the apples with a little bit of maple syrup. You can use up to 3 tablespoons. It really depends on how sweet your apples are, and a little bit of freshly grated nutmeg.
Okay, so would you put that like in the bowl, or would you put that in the whole pot?
I would put it in the whole pot once it's pureed, and to serve it, just sprinkle a little bit of pumpkin seeds, serve it with a whole grain roll, or you can even make croutons. Again, use your imagination, but it's a great soup to start your meal.
Okay, so that's the savory. Now we're going to do the sweet, and we've got, I think, about 2 minutes left. So we're going to make these muffins.
That's right. So they're the apple crumb spice muffins, and I like muffins, especially when you're cooking in the kitchen with kids, because it doesn't require any kind of fancy equipment.
It's not fussy.
That's right. So you have the dry ingredients, and if you could whisk that. I like to use a whisk.
Okay.
So I have whole wheat flour and regular flour. I also have some nutmeg, some cinnamon, and some ginger. And I have the wet ingredients. So that's kind of like your muffin method, dry and wet. So in my wet, I have some plain yogurt, and I also have 2 Ontario eggs. I just added in some vegetable oil. That gets all whisked together. And what you have to do ahead of time is to make your crumb topping, which is just brown sugar, and I have cinnamon in there, and some flour, some vegetable oil. I've chopped up 2 apples, and I use, I know what I used here. Sorry, I use Cortland and Macintosh apples. And again, the skin on. The goodness is there. Apples are a source
All
of
right.
fiber and vitamin C.
We've got about 30 seconds left, so we're just going to pour it in there,
Pour
and
it
then
in
it's
there.
really easy, right?
That's right. And then we would just stir in the apples. They go into your muffin tins, 375 degrees, 18 to 22 minutes. The best way to check is just with a toothpick inserted in the
it clean?
center,
Yeah.
and it's clean.
Okay. Throw those apples in there, and we'll get the recipe and the links up on our website, chch.com. So great to have you back in here.
Thank
'cause
you.
You leave the food, and that's awesome.
Yes, enjoy.
I really should have used the. Oh, I've made a mess of your whisk already.
That's
This was not the best idea.
Yeah, I should have told
Of
you
me,
whisk
yes.
and